so welcome this afternoon to our little Xero webinar on Xero reporting. And I'm really going to sort of focus on the reports you should be running like around the time of a quarter, at the end of the quarter, just so that maybe if you're not tracking anything in your business, that you might start tracking something in your business, because running reports should be linked to what your KPIs are, which are your key performance indicators, which you should be drawn out of your business plan. So you know what it is that you want to achieve ongoing in the business, and the reports can give you those insights that you may need. So I'm utilizing the Xero demo company today. So obviously the data in here, is flawed, but it's better than nothing, and it gives us this great opportunity to jump on together and have a look into it and dig a little bit deeper. The first thing that you really need to know when you're running your reports is what's your reconciliation of your books. So in Xero itself, have you completed all the reconciliations? So if you're looking at the month of October, say, or say the month of September, you want to make sure that all of your reconciliations are done for that period. So in this case, we can see all of September's been reconciled. So therefore, we shouldn't have any problems with it. Now, one of the first reports you can run is you can run this reconciliation report, which you can get to from within your dashboard of going into your bank account. So if I click on here on the reconciliation report, what this report is telling me is, if you're a bookkeeper or doing the books on your business, is am I reconciling everything correctly? Because if you look at this, it's quite, it's got a little bit of work going on in here. So it says the first one to look at is unreconciled statement lines. So we're already aware that all of those October ones haven't been reconciled. So that's okay in this case. We're not worried about that. But if there was anything in here from September back, you'd want to have a closer look at it, such as this one here, this payment from 2017, as to why is it sitting in my reconciliation report? I need to get rid of it and clear it out, okay? But there's nothing else for September, so I'm pretty happy with that report, and I've done everything, like all my reconciliations. You can also check other bank accounts from here to make sure that they're all being, reconciled correctly. And you can see here they're only October, they're fine. So the balance is fine. So that's what we call that reconciliation report. And I advise you to do this when you're running your quarterly reports. Jump in here, double check that everything balances and that you've reconciled what you needed to for the parameters that you're running your reporting. So when you're running reports in Xero, I just want to bring up a bit of a document I had drafted. Let's have a quick look. So the reports you should be looking at is you undergo accounting and go to reports. You'll notice here though that I've actually got some reports already being flagged, and how I've done that is if I go into reports, I've starred the reports that I want to keep as my favorite, and they show up the top here as well. But if you look through the list of reports that Xero has, they've got their star that's been highlighted. So they're always going to show up. The other thing is that there is also a bit of a header here on all of your different reports. So you might actually, instead of running these raw reports from Xero, you might actually build some custom reports in Xero itself, and I can show you how to do that. So that every quarter you just jump in, go to custom report and call it quarterly report, and then you'll run that report that you're after. There's obviously advisor reports, which you wouldn't see, but they belong to the accounting firm if they've got advisor access, so they can run their particular reports that they needed. And then under published, you might have, say, some published financials in here or published reports. Maybe quarterly you publish your reports as well, just so that you can go back and track it and have a look at it. So when they're published, they're in that PDF format normally as well. All right, so if I go back to home, I think some of the basic reports that we all should be somewhat familiar with and are an easy one to start at is the first one just being that profit and loss report, that P&L. So let's have a look at this report. So automatically when I run it, Xero's bringing it up and looking at October. But if you recall, I sort of wanted to have a look at last month's figures, say. So I'm going to put in September so I can change the dates, and you can change them to whatever it is you like. You can't actually set a favorite or anything though in there. You might want to compare it with the last few months, so you can see how you're tracking September against August and July, if you had tracking categories in there as well. Now, the other thing to remember with your Xero reports is that in Xero, it always defaults to accrual. But if you're a cash basis business, if that's how you report to the ATO, you might want to run your reports in cash. At the end of the day, if you're running quarterly reports for your business, it's about being consistent. If you run them at an accrual basis, just run them every quarter at accrual, okay? But when you get your tax done, if you're reporting on a cash basis, it just might look that little bit different, because accrual basis is, you know, what you're invoiced, etc. Whereas cash is, it's whatever you've got in the bank account. It's not looking at the invoices that you've raised that haven't been paid yet, etc. So we'll just go with the default today. So you can see here the profit and loss, it's bringing up what your income is trading wise and then what your operating expenses are. What a profit and loss does not show you is maybe you've got loans in here that you've been paying as well. So loans payments come out of a different report, and that's what we call that balance sheet on the other side. But today's about just showing you some quarterly reports and how you can change them to maybe suit you and what you're looking for in your business. So on the profit and loss, you might have had a budget that you've inputted into Xero, which is a great idea, but it's not showing up on this default report. So I can customize this report if I wish. To do that, I just jump on Edit Layout. And Xero's already built in features that make it really like a bit easier for you when you're building these reports. You don't have to be an IT person to be able to do it. So if you go up the top, there's quite a few different options up here. One of the best ones is to utilize is that column. So I want to add my budget. So if I've inputted my budget into Xero, it's going to show up in here in this report. There are different things that I can also change in here. I could, put a different, call it a different heading. I could overtype anything in there or any of these different columns if I wanted to. But to me, that's not really important to customize that particular space at the moment. It's about running quarterly reports, seeing how I use them, and then probably go into that little bit more detail on how to customize them. If I get here and I'm like, actually, I don't want that, I can just trash that column. If I decide I don't really want to look at June, if that's last financial year, I just want to have a look at the 3 months and that overall budget. So there, you'll notice there are other columns as well. So if you wanted to know, run a formula or a percentage, like what variances you've got, maybe that might be one to throw in there as well to see. So you might want to see what your September variance is from your August and show it as a percentage. So put a few things in there. You can have a play around with it. You can't break it. So you just then hit Update Layout, and then the report will spit out. Okay, so you can see the parameters that I've changed, and you can also see in the variance column, it's telling me something that my sales are down. So from the budget, it's comparing, yeah? So it's looking at the budget and going, you're not hitting your budgets, what's going on? Does my budget need to be adjusted? Do I need to increase my sales? How am I going to do that? So running reports is all about showing you the data, and then you can go, oh, okay, I need to make some decisions here. What is my data telling me, and what do I need to do differently in my business? And that's where if you have a budget that's realistic, and if you then run that variance column, you know that you're going to really isolate and look at those items that are highlighted in red to go through. And with your expenses, again, you could have a look and go, well, my advertising's up, but my I haven't actually hit budget. So is the advertising I'm investing in, is it the right for my business? Or maybe it's that you need to give it time. You need to allow maybe the advertisement project that you're undergoing to run its full course to see whether or not it makes an impact on your numbers. And vice versa, maybe you've had cutbacks, so you've had savings that you've had to make in the business. So you can identify that on a profit and loss. Now with that, if you wanted to keep it as a custom report, you would hit Save As, and jump that report here, and you click on the custom side. Now, when I customize it, I do not want to customize it to say the profit and loss or make it as the default. I want to add something different into the name so it's really identifiable what's going on. So I might want to call it quarterly, something like that, and I do not want to make it the default. Otherwise, this report will always come up when you run a P&L. Right, so we've run that report. It's now been put into, made as a custom report. So you'll notice that that tag there has changed, and that I could always go in here and pull it and change, you know, dates, etc. on it if I wanted to pull that profit and loss. You can also export it to an Excel spreadsheet or PDF if you wanted to package it up and save it on a file or send it out to maybe other business partners. It's up to you. There is versatility. Some people like to actually download it into an Excel spreadsheet, jump in and have a play around and manipulate it to see what about the what ifs and what changes you can make in the business. So now the other quarterly report that you could look at and track is your balance sheet. You know, a lot aren't probably going to run this particular report because it's more of a report that's made for accountants and the ATO, not necessarily business owners know how to read it. But there's areas in here that you can run specific reports on, which I think are really important. I'm going to run through them shortly. So in this balance sheet, there's not really much there. So let's just run it as today's date. Once again, it's got an accrual and cash. So I'm just going to leave it as default. And you can see there's more information because I've gone and had a look at a different date as of today. So this report's just telling me what's in my bank account, what assets I've got, and what other liabilities I might have. There's nothing too sinister in here. The one thing I would be looking at is right here under my current assets is my accounts receivable. So it's telling me that I have $25,000 outstanding in this business of outstanding invoices that have not been paid by my customers. So to me, if I needed to make budget and it's almost the end of the month, I would be looking at that and going, well, I need some cash in the business. And this report is telling me that this is what I need to look at so I can get some cash in. So you don't necessarily have to click here and then go through it that way. There are other reports you can run in the business. Now, I'm going to show you the accounts receivable report. Now, I don't recommend that you run it quarterly. I recommend that you run it more often. And I think it depends on the business as to how often that is. But in essence, it could just be that once a month. But it depends on the business structure. You might not actually have any accounts receivable outstanding. So if I go to accounting and I've got my aged receivable summaries report that I want to have a look at now, because this will show me what's outstanding. So you can see here that's got the total here of all of the payments in total of what are outstanding. I can see here that I've got some invoices here that are, this one here is 2 months old. That's obviously a credit that's been applied in that month. And I've got these items here that are over a month old. So maybe it's time that just sending out an invoice isn't enough, that we actually need to make some calls to these businesses and go, you know, go through your process of calling them and advising them that you've got some invoices outstanding and, you know, maybe they need to set up a payment plan with you, whatever it is, and however you work with your clients as to what that looks like. So this is the report for running to see if you have any accounts receivable. If you need a cash injection in your business, this is probably one of the first reports you can run and have a look at and start making some phone calls so that you could get in. Now, if this business made some phone calls and had success on each of them, they could potentially bring in another $20,000 at the click of a finger because it's money that's been owed to them. Those invoices are sent out, okay? So hopefully, if you're not doing that, maybe that's something you could start doing differently today as a result of coming along to this webinar. The next one I want to have a look at is maybe you're in business and you've got bills everywhere and you're running them through Xero and you're just not sure who to pay first, how much have you got outstanding. other than looking at the dashboard for accounts receivable. So there is a report you can run, and that's called your aged payables report. So with our aged payables report, you can see it's come up. It's saying I've got all these suppliers that I owe funds to, and there's a total of just under $9,000. Maybe all of these needed to be paid right now because the suppliers are calling you for payment. So you need to get the money in through your receivables in order to be able to make payment on the invoices that you owe to your suppliers. So it could be that you're doing, maybe you pay your bills at the end of the month or mid-month, that you run this report and you go, okay, well, which ones am I going to pay first and which ones am I going to ring and say, hey, can I get an extension on my payment, please? Because it's really important that you talk to your suppliers to work out what's going on and let them know or show some goodwill that maybe you go on a payment plan with them to make those payments. Also, now you'll realise that when you're lodging your activity statements in Xero, that it actually generates an invoice for you. So those invoices should also show up as outstanding to pay as well to the ATO. So it's maybe the GST bill that you need to pay to the ATO, because they're not going to show up in here unless you're utilising that feature on Xero, or you're creating an invoice every time you've lodged your activity statement and created an invoice to then make that payment to the ATO. Because you might think, oh, yep, I've got that money, I can pay it. But at the end of the day, you might not, because half of it's got to go to the tax man on your activity statement. Okie dokie. Let's move on to the next one. So in here, I've obviously got these reports here that I looked at, the balance sheet and the profit and loss. So there are some other important reports that you can run to check. So if you're not paying your super, or sorry, I should go back. If you've got payroll in your Xero file, you should always be checking what your super accruals are on a quarterly basis, just to make sure that, have I paid them? Are they all on time? Do I need to schedule that payment to make it? So you can always run the super accruals report. Unfortunately, the demo company, the report comes up blank, but it tells you what super's been accrued in that time frame. And you've also got a superannuation paid report you can run. Another report is if you're in the, say, building industry primarily, you may be flagged to lodge a TPAR to the ATO every year. And you can run a TPAR report here. So that's just telling a lot of people in the trades industries that who they've been paying as subcontractors, because the ATO want to know what subcontractors you're paying. Are they GST registered? How much GST did you pay them? So that they can check that the subcontractor is reporting correctly. So I usually run a little webinar on that as well, on how to set all that information up in Xero, but I'm not going to go into that today. But it's a good little report to check in on to make sure that you are paying your subcontractors, you're capturing the GST right with them. So as with quarterly reporting, you're probably doing your activity statement. So you might lodge that prior to doing the quarterly reporting. So that's why I have that activity statement and the account transactions flagged as well in there. So there's some of the quarterly reports that I recommend business owners to run in their Xero file. So you've got that profit and loss, the balance sheet, focusing on the accounts receivable report, and then your accounts payable report. There are a lot of other features in Xero itself, and there are a lot of other reports, but they're sort of the primary ones that if you're not using reporting, to be running those first. Now, there are other areas and features that Xero has built over time, and that's in this particular space of the business snapshot and the short-term cash flow. I'm not going into that one today, but next month in November, I'm going to be running a webinar on those particular features of Xero and just some other little, I suppose, tips for anyone utilising Xero, and how I suppose they can level up their game of how they're utilising, making sure that they have the information and utilising the information as they need. All right, so what I might do there is I might stop the recording, and then you can turn your cameras on if you wish and ask any questions.